Welcome to Topic 4 of Ethics and Governance. So far in this course, we have looked mostly at structures, boards, codes, regulators, committees, but here is an uncomfortable truth. Structures alone do not make people behave honestly. You can have a perfect organization chart and still have dishonest people inside it. What actually makes people do the right thing is ethics. So in this topic, we turn to the human heart of the subject. We will define what ethics and a code of ethics are, understand why the finance industry, in particular, depends on them so heavily, meet the three classic theories that philosophers use to judge right from wrong, and learn a simple, practical framework for resolving real ethical dilemmas. The textbook carries the full detail. In this video, let us focus on understanding the ideas and how to use them. Let me open with a question, and it is a real one that finance professionals face. Imagine a fund manager who can make a particular trade that is completely legal. No rule forbids it. Yet that trade quietly benefits him at the expense of his own clients. The law does not stop him. So how should he decide what to do? Notice that this is not a legal question at all. The law has already said yes. It is an ethical question, a question about what he should do, not merely what he is allowed to do. And that distinction is the whole territory of this topic. Keep this case in mind, because finance is absolutely full of situations exactly like it, where the law is silent or permissive, but the right course of action is still very clear once you know how to look. Ethics in finance is not just a matter of private conscience floating in the air. It is shaped by real bodies and written rules, and you should know them. Professional institutes set codes of conduct for their members. Globally, the CFA Institute, whose code is well known among investment professionals. And here in Malaysia, the Malaysian Institute of Accountants, the MIA, which binds accountants through its bylaws on professional conduct. On top of that, regulators such as the Securities Commission and Bank Negara Malaysia set clear expectations of fair and honest conduct in the financial industry. And finally, every well-run firm has its own internal code of ethics. So the point is this: ethics in finance has been written down, professionalized, and enforced. It is personal conviction, yes, but it is also a formal shared standard. After this topic, you should be able to do the following: define ethics and a code of ethics and name the core values they uphold. Explain why ethics matters so much in the finance industry specifically, not just in business generally. Describe the three ethical theories and apply them to a real finance case. Identify what a code of ethics actually contains and what complying with it truly means, and use a simple decision framework to work your way through an ethical dilemma. So we move from defining ethics all the way up to actually reasoning with it under pressure. Here is our journey. First, what ethics and a code of ethics are. Second, why ethics matters especially in finance. Third, the three ethical theories that help us judge right from wrong. And fourth, how to make ethical decisions in practice, including the common ethical issues that recur in finance. By the end, you will have both the concepts and a practical tool you can actually use when you face a hard case. Let us begin by defining our terms carefully. What is ethics and what is a code of ethics? Let us start with ethics itself. The best way to picture ethics is as a moral compass, an inner sense that guides a person to do the right thing in a decision, even when no law is forcing them to. It points to what you should do, not merely what you are permitted to do. Now, in finance specifically, ethics rests on four core values, and I want you to be able to name and explain each. The first is integrity, honesty and consistency, doing what you said you would do. being the same person whether or not anyone is watching. The second is objectivity, keeping your professional judgment free from bias, from conflicts of interest, from undue influence. The third is transparency, openness, not hiding things that the people relying on you have a right to know. And the fourth is accountability, being willing to answer for your actions. Now, what is a code of ethics? A code of ethics takes that in a compass and writes it down. Formally, it is a written guideline of acceptable professional conduct built on those shared values for professionals such as accountants, analysts, bankers, and fund managers. And by making the expectations explicit, by putting them in writing, a code strengthens internal control, deters misconduct, and supports a culture of integrity across the whole organization. It turns private conscience into a shared, enforceable standard. Now, why does ethics matter so much in finance specifically? Other industries have ethics too, so what makes finance special? The answer is trust, combined with other people's money. Think carefully about what happens when you deal with a financial institution. You deposit your life savings, you buy a unit trust, you take advice on your retirement, and in every case, you are trusting a professional to act in your interest, very often using information and expertise that you simply do not have and cannot check. That gap, the professional knows far more than you do, is called information asymmetry, and it creates constant temptation and constant opportunity for abuse. And here is what makes the stakes so high. In finance, a single dishonest act can harm thousands of people who will never even meet the person responsible. A banker who missells a product, an analyst who hides a conflict, an executive who fakes the accounts. Each can ruin the savings of an enormous number of ordinary people in one stroke. That is why the finance industry, more than almost any other, leans so heavily on codes of ethics, on regulation, and on professional standards. The whole system runs on trust, and ethics is what protects that trust. To judge right from wrong in a disciplined way, ethicists use three classic theories. Let us meet all three, because each gives you a different and useful lens. The three ethical theories give you three different lenses on the same problem, and the real power comes from using them together. The first is utilitarianism. Utilitarianism judges an action by its consequences. The right choice is the one that produces the greatest good for the greatest number of people. It asks, who is helped, who is harmed, and on balance, does this action do more good than harm? The second is deontology. Deontology judges by duties and rules rather than outcomes. It says some actions are simply right or wrong in themselves, regardless of the consequences. For example, the duty not to lie, or the principle that you must never treat people merely as a means to your own ends. A deontologist would say, even if a lie produced a good outcome, lying is still wrong because you have a duty to be honest. The third is virtue ethics. Virtue ethics judges by character. It does not start with rules or consequences, but asks, what would a person of good character, someone honest, prudent, and courageous, actually do here? Now, none of these three is perfect on its own. You can find awkward cases for each, but together they are powerful. When a course of action passes all three tests, it produces good consequences, it is consistent with your duties, and it is what a person of good character would do, then you can be genuinely confident that it is ethical. And when they disagree, that disagreement itself tells you that you are facing a real dilemma that deserves careful thought. Now let us look at what a code of ethics actually contains and what complying with it really means, because compliance is more than you might think. A code of ethics typically contains guidance on the recurring problems that finance professionals predictably face. It addresses conflicts of interest, situations where your personal incentive clashes with your client's interest. It addresses the confidentiality of client information, not misusing what you learn. It addresses fair dealing, honest communication, and maintaining your professional competence. But here is the part students often get wrong. Complying with a code is much more than simply not breaking its rules. At its core, complying means actively disclosing conflicts of interest rather than concealing them, putting the client's interest ahead of your own, and being transparent. Let me make that concrete. Suppose an advisor earns a commission for selling a particular product. The unethical, non-compliant path is to hide that commission and push the product. The ethical, compliant path is to disclose the commission openly and then recommend honestly on the merits so the client can judge for themselves. So compliance is an active duty of honesty and openness. It is something you do, not merely something you refrain from doing. Codes of ethics exist precisely because certain ethical issues recur in finance over and over in every market and every generation. Let me name the most common ones so you can recognize them instantly. Insider trading, using material, non-public information to trade for personal gain, which is unfair to everyone who does not have that information, and in most countries illegal. Conflicts of interest, where your personal incentives clash with a client's interests. Mis-selling and irresponsible lending, profiting from a customer's weakness or lack of understanding. Selling them something that benefits you more than them. The misuse of confidential data and misleading disclosure, presenting information in a way designed to deceive. Notice that each of these breaches one of our core values: fairness, loyalty, honesty, or transparency. And here is the useful part. Recognizing these patterns is half the battle. Once you can correctly name the issue in front of you, this is a conflict of interest. The code itself usually tells you how to respond. Knowing the theory is not enough. A professional has to be able to decide, often quickly and under pressure. So let us learn a simple, practical framework you can actually carry with you. There is a simple and surprisingly powerful tool called the ethical triple test. Before you take any financial decision, you ask yourself 3 questions in turn. First question, is it legal? If it breaks the law, stop right there. But, and this is the whole point of the topic, passing the legal test is not enough, so you go on. Second question, is it fair? Fair to your clients, fair to your colleagues, fair to the market and to everyone affected? Would you be comfortable if you were on the receiving end of this decision? And third question, would I be proud if this decision were made public, printed on the front page of the newspaper tomorrow, seen by my family, my colleagues, my regulator? This third question is wonderfully revealing because so much misconduct depends on secrecy. If you would be ashamed for people to know, that is a powerful signal that something is wrong. Now here is the rule. If the answer to any one of the 3 questions is no, the action should not be taken. The test is quick enough to use in real time, yet it captures the very essence of ethical reasoning: legality, fairness, and the transparency of a clear conscience. When you face a dilemma in your career, run it through these 3 questions, and more often than not, the right answer will become clear. Let me consolidate the common ethical issues at a glance, so the whole landscape sits in one picture. Insider trading breaches fairness. Conflict of interest breaches loyalty and objectivity. Irresponsible lending and mis-selling breach the duty to treat customers fairly. Misuse of data breaches confidentiality, and misleading reporting breaches honesty and transparency. And against every one of them, the family of remedies is the same: disclosure, putting the client first, and the discipline of the ethical triple test. That single grid maps the entire ethical terrain of finance. And if you can reproduce it, you understand this topic. Let us see the topic as one map. At the center is the code of ethics. Around it, the definition of ethics and its four core values: integrity, objectivity, transparency, accountability. The reason ethics matters so much in finance, because the whole industry runs on trust with other people's money. The three theories, utilitarianism, deontology, and virtue ethics, what a code actually contains, and what genuine compliance means, and the ethical triple test for resolving real dilemmas. Together, these turn good intentions into sound, defensible judgment. That concludes topic 4. Let me leave you with what to carry forward. Ethics is doing the right thing beyond what the law strictly requires. And in finance, it is built on integrity, objectivity, transparency, and accountability. Finance depends on ethics more than almost any industry because it runs on trust with other people's money. The three theories, utilitarianism, deontology, and virtue ethics, give you three lenses, and they are most powerful when used together. Complying with the code centers on disclosing conflicts and putting clients first, not merely avoiding rule breaking. And the ethical triple test: is it legal? Is it fair? Would I be proud to make it public? Is your practical guide in the moment. Please read the full chapter in the textbook. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.